أريد أن أعطي الكلمة للدكتور عبد الله بن حميد علي. سيتحدث عن المحبة والسلام كأساس للهدي النبوي في السلم والحرب. الكلمة لكم. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, may the peace and blessings of God be upon his prophet and his companions. May God bless our prophet and his followers. Our prayers to our prophet Muhammad in the name of God.
Be invited to this blessed country and to this blessed university. I'd like to thank the custodians of this beautiful university, Dr. Aisha Manari, may Allah preserve you, as well as, of course, Dr. Rajab Shinturk, and all of the rest of you who've helped to organize this very important event. My particular talk in my paper is entitled Love, Peace, and the Love of Peace. The original paper itself is about 9.5 pages, so of course I had to condense it significantly for the purpose of this particular panel in hopes that I'll be able to get through the main points of the paper itself. So in consideration of time, I wanted to begin my talk with a summary of my thesis, which is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam promoted trust rather than fear to achieve his religious and political goals with both friends and enemies. He employed what I call a love ethic to spread trust, which ultimately resulted in peace. Put another way, he employed love as a tool of peace, that is peace both in this life and the next, as well as peace in domestic and foreign affairs. This love of his was neither erotic nor utilitarian. This love, rather, was a pursuit, promotion, and reward of virtue. Nothing better augments peace than the virtue of the governor, citizens, and foreign adversaries, because virtue promotes trust. Trust that one's promises and commitments can be taken seriously, and trust that peace and friendship, rather than domination and control, are the true objective of one's efforts. The conquest of Mecca, the subsequent expedition in Hunain, and his letters to his foreign adversaries served as the ultimate manifestations of the sincerity of the Prophet's claims, inasmuch that his policies reassured them that his goal was not to usurp their power nor their wealth. It was merely to ensure that God's rule in their lives and those of their citizens was central to their socio-political existence. This is why so many of them enjoyed continued influence, leadership, and property expansion after their moral and military defeats. In similar fashion, his letters to foreign leaders always begun with an invitation and opportunity to gain heavenly reward for submitting to God, even if that message wasn't always received graciously. Aslim taslim, yu'tika Allahu ajraka marratain. The fundamental lessons we learn are: one, that injustice is the perennial guarantor of domestic instability. And two, efforts to alter the status quo will always be met with fierce resistance unless challengers can provide assurances that their primary goal is merely to reform rather than replace political actors with themselves. The Prophet's treatment of Meccan aristocrats after the conquest and the Hunain exposition are key areas of focus to see this ethic at work. It is also observed in his treatment of Jews after the surge of Khaybar, and how his political successors treated the people of the newly conquered territories during Islam's expansion. Peace and virtue are inseparable. Virtuous leadership and a virtuous population create the conditions for true peace, while peace provides the environment in which virtue can flourish. This synergy is central to the prophetic model of governance. The authors of the prophetic biography purport that the first public address delivered by the Prophet ﷺ consisted of the following words: Ayyuhan nas afshu salam wa at'imu ta'am wa sallu bil layli wa nasu niyam tadkhulu jannata bi salam. O people, spread peace, offer food to others, and pray at night when people are asleep. You will enter paradise with peace. Note how this hadith presents peace as both a means and an end. If you spread peace, your reward will be peace. In a similar address, the Prophet said, La tadkhulu jannata hatta tu'minu, wa la tu'minu hatta tahabbu. Ala adullukum ala shay'in idha fa'altumuhu tahabbtum afshu salama bainakum. You will not enter paradise until you achieve faith, and we will not achieve faith until you love one another. Shall I not guide you to something? Were you to do it, you will love one another, spread peace among yourselves. In the second hadith, the Prophet ﷺ underscores that while the goal is to enter paradise, the achievement of this end is contingent upon faith. Faith is contingent upon mutual love, and the spread of peace is the most important tool for spreading love. But what does the Prophet ﷺ mean by love? Love, according to Raghab al-Asfahani, means to want what one sees or thinks is good. Raghab further divides love into three types: 1, erotic love; 2, utilitarian love; and 3, virtuous love. The first and second are self-explanatory. Virtuous love is when one loves another because of a virtue he or she has, such as knowledge or forbearance. We also find in the tradition attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Jubilatil qulubu ala hubbi man ahsana ilayha." Hearts are disposed to love those who show them goodwill. We also find tahadu tahabbu, exchange gifts, exchange love. This suggests that goodwill and acts of kindness are ways of spreading peace. Through peace, we achieve love. Through mutual love, we achieve faith. And through faith, we attain paradise. This love ethic manifested in many ways during the life of the Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam. He took counsel from his companions about important matters of the state and martial defense. He refused to kill hypocrites to mitigate defection and the impression that his friends have no special station. He declined the request to regulate the prices of goods in the market to avoid the ire of merchants. He forbade any transaction he feared would lead to disputes, the impression of fraud and exploitation. He left the Meccan chiefs in charge of public affairs after their conversion on the day of the Meccan conquest. He forgave his enemies, giving Safwan ibn Umayyah increasingly until he said, God's messenger gave me on the day of Hunayn, while being the most hated of people to me. And he continued to give me until he is now the most beloved of creation to me. After praying inside the Kaaba, the Prophet ﷺ, he returned the keys to Uthman ibn Talha. He borrowed shields from Safwan and rewarded him with 100 camels from the spoils of Hunayn. And during his expedition, he left the young Attab ibn Asid in charge of Mecca and said to him, O Attab, do you know over whom I have given you charge? I have given you charge over God's people, mighty and majestic. And had I known from them one better than you, I would have given him charge over them. There should be no reason to wonder then why Abu Sufyan said of the Prophet's companions, Ma ra'aytu ahadan yuhibbu ahadan ka hubbi ashabi Muhammadin Muhammada. I have never seen anyone love a person the way the companions of Muhammad love Muhammad. When the overriding concerns of rulers become the eternal salvation of his populations and living virtuous lives, we may once again witness broad human flourishing. And when citizens do less to threaten the rule of governors, governors may feel less inclined to employ suppressive and oppressive tools of domination. No matter how strong the revolutionary impulse becomes in the population, Islam is a religion of social and moral reform, seeking to fix what is broken in the current order, not to destroy it and rebuild anew. The Prophet exerted great effort in reform. The Prophet exerted greater effort in reform than revolution, as his greatest concern was the soul's eternal salvation. God was once the central focus of societies around the world, but today religious governance gives rise to anxiety due to the historical tyranny of certain institutions and the religious zealotry among many today. Consequently, many more governments are electing to increase secularization in hopes to better manage ideological diversity among their populations. But what if secularization does not mean sacrificing God, religious mores, and the promotion of a virtuous society? God can still be the center of public concern, the object of our devotion, and the author of our moral universe. The world is not in chaos because because of God and religion. Its chaos rather stems from their absence. The less religion, the more tyranny. The less religion, the greater the need for a police state. As fewer people believe in a reckoning after death, the more lawless society will become. Governments are indispensable, but their relationship with those they govern should be one of care and repair, not domination and servitude. Muslims have had a history of pluralistic living long before the rise of democracy in the secular state. So one might challenge the assertion that inclusive citizenship is only possible in a secular society, where the role of God and religious influence are marginalized. According to Aristotle, quote, by way of translation, democracies and oligarchies are not made by the numerical portion of the rulers to the ruled. Democracy is the rule of the poor. Oligarchy is that of the rich. Democrats take equality for their model. Oligarchs believe that political rights should be unequal and proportionate to wealth. But both sides miss the true object of the state, which is virtue. Those who do the most to promote virtue deserve the greatest share of power. On the same principle, justice is not the will of the majority or of the wealthier, but that course of action which the moral aim of the state requires, unquote. In Islam, every act of the human being is assigned a moral value. For this reason, it is impossible to restrict religion to the private sphere. Saying this is not an endorsement of what has come to be known as Islamism, but merely a reutterance of the nature of the vertical and horizontal relationships between God and the people, between governors and the governed. If every act is either encouraged, discouraged, or morally neutral, then even political decisions require God's evaluation. This is why our scholars wrote books like As-Siyasat al-Shar'iyya, Siraj al-Muluk, and Al-Ahkam al-Sultaniyya. Their titles remind us that both kings and those they rule need reform and correction. They further remind us that these are not the rules of the Sultan, but the rules for the Sultan. It was Machiavelli who said, "It is better to be feared than to be loved," a well-acknowledged wisdom embraced by practically every head of state throughout history since. Fear has its place, but a wise statesman is he who sees himself primarily as a public servant to his citizens, not one to whom obedience is given the greatest priority. And the wisest of statesmen are those who prioritize public reminders of God, the promotion of public virtue, and the basic needs of his people. In doing so, he creates and augments a society loyal to the ruling class, whose successes reinforce public trust, stability, patriotism, and national longevity, especially when threatened by external forces. There is little need for a highly militarized police force when one rules over a virtuous population. This is why Abu Bakr al-Tartushi quotes Aristotle's counsel to Alexander: "Rule the people or rule the public through goodwill. You will win their love, because pursuing that from them through goodwill is more effective at prolonging one's stay than through domination. He then quotes from the wisdoms of Persia, the hearts of citizens are the treasure chests of his kings. So whatever they store in them, they should know is there. قلوب الرعية خزائن ملوكها فما أودعوها من شيء فليعلموا أنه فيها. To the extent that rulers successfully promote trust in their political wisdom and goodwill, do the people serve as the strongest guarantee against self-destruction and targeted destabilization. It was in such a manner that the Prophet ﷺ united his followers, secured their love, and made them willing to sacrifice life, limb, and property for the success of his mission. That mission was to bring God and God's way to everyone they encountered. It was to communicate the pathways to worldly happiness and eternal salvation in the hereafter. In short, love of God and love of God's creation was the message. It was spread through the promotion of peace and goodwill. Jazakumullah khaira wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullah. Jazakallah khairan for your presentation. So the next speaker is